So this next question, how should Christians approach social media and technology usage? Isn't that a good question? Yeah. I say thanks. This is a good question. This is a question, well, I'll turn it off. That's the easy answer. Some of you don't have social media. You ought to say right now, oh, you don't know what you're missing. Or you do know what you're missing and you're happy to not be entangled in it. I think this question should take to consider very seriously, not just how do we handle social media. So I think there's probably two questions inside of this. Because social media is a part of the modern technology. And then I want to say, let me handle the other question about technology in the same question. But the social media is, if we're being honest with this, which we should be, right? Most interaction in social media is a feeder for narcissistic activity. Now I say that very carefully, recognizing, even because I'm on the social media, I'm in the social media world, and I have to recognize this, that there are things that I know. If I post a picture of my dad holding a bottle of barbecue sauce that looks like a bottle of whiskey, I know that's going to get more likes than nearly anything else I say. My dad, who, to my knowledge, at least in my life, never drank whiskey, but he liked his barbecue sauce. And so on Father's Day, I posted that. And I think, well, that's funny. And it really was. Internally, I'm still chuckling at it. But then I have to realize, well, okay, what am I really trying to entangle with here? What's feeding my desire to be in the middle of attention? I better be honest about it. So I say to the Christian who entangles in social media, you better have your eyes wide open. There is a gateway to narcissistic activity in the middle of social media. Now, I also think, I get most of the things that I will eventually go and read, reliable, which is hard to find, isn't it? Reliable news sources. But I have a Twitter account, and let me tell you, Twitter is all over the place. And it is a black hole of wasted life. I learn most of the things I want to go read about, serious things, out of things that my friends will post on their Twitter account. So I have to recognize I can easily get lost here and have wasted unknown numbers of hours only for a few things that I'm going to pull out of that to go get some good value out of. So I just say be really careful with social media. I think there's probably a good practice to have rules. And listen, I'm not perfect in this. In our house, at times we'll make more strict rules. You know, the phones aren't near the bed. We don't. The amount of time that we spend on this is not going to happen when we should be doing that, or at the expense of doing that. So be careful with social media and recognize that it can be, and many times really is, a waste of a lot of good, unrecoverable time. It's the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians, I believe it's chapter 10, where he says, take every thought captive. And I think that's how we ought to treat social media, take every thought captive. You know, if you don't know this about social media, then you need to get off of social media if you have it. And that is, not everything that's on social media is true. Okay? Take every thought captive.
Treat it like the Inquirer.
Treat it like the old days of the National Enquirer. Oh, I'm going to laugh at that while I don't buy that magazine, right? Yeah, I think treating it for realizing what it really is. Now, as far as technology, I want to treat technology in a similar way. I want to treat it under the same precept and principle of Scripture. Take every thought captive. So technology is something that's always advancing. Technology is not just electronical computers. As you know, we're in this day of technology, but technology is inventions of new things. We can do things so much more efficiently today. We can do things so much differently today. A lot of that's because of technology. So there's good in the technology. But again, we should take every thought captive. We utilize a streaming service here in our church. Hey, that's a technology that wasn't afforded to the average church even 15 years ago. That's how. I mean, streaming and live video feed has been longer than 15 years ago, but churches couldn't afford it. Today, if a church isn't on some kind of a streaming platform, one must ask, do they have any money at all? Because it's nearly free. Your only expenses are going to be some equipment, some technology, cameras and computers, and get online, and next thing you know, the whole world has access to your preaching. And isn't that a glorious thing? It is, but I think we should take that thought captive. There is something that can get lost in the technology, and that is people will substitute staying at home, listening to a service, for gathering in the same room, breathing the same air, singing the same songs, listening to the same sermon at the same time together. It can really get lost, can't it? AI. I don't know what to do about AI yet. I think there's going to be, we're using AI, by the way. Our streaming services actually are using an AI to, for years I've wanted to have a transcript of all of my sermons. Now within about an hour of streaming our services, AI produces a manuscript of every sermon I preach. Now I read through many of them and I think, well, that's better. That's written better than I wrote it. It's punctuated better than I punctuated it. So I think there is some value in AI. Now, like all other technologies, really like all other vices or all other things, they can be used for great evil. And we're going to find, you're probably already getting robocalls that you don't even know are AI-generated phone calls. So we're going to have to learn how to navigate through that piece of the technology. But, so this AI, not only do I have a written manuscript of every sermon I preach that's archived on sermon audio, but I also have sermons translated into foreign languages through AI into about 30 different languages. And so literally, we can, through our little church in Twin Falls, Idaho, project the gospel to the ends of the earth through that camera and that computer. I mean, that's technology. The Apostle Paul knew nothing. I mean, it would take the Apostle Paul months to travel from here to there. And most everything he does in between, he's going to get shipwrecked, beaten, nearly to death before he gets there to get the gospel to him. So take every thought captive. Take every technology captive. Use it for the glory of God, cautiously, and is it possible that AI can be used for the glory of God? Well, I think it can be. We just better be really careful with and be aware of it. Have your eyes open, right? Be aware of what's going on. Here's maybe one thing before, and then I'll move on to the next question here. One thing that I would say that technology is both good and potentially dangerous to the church is, I don't get this anymore. One, because Charles Stanley is no longer living, but he's still being aired on television or radio. But it would not be uncommon in my life. I get called from a nursing home here in town and say, well, so-and-so's a Baptist and they'd like for a Baptist pastor to come by and visit with them. I'll be happy to. I'll get there and I'll just do a little inquiring. And you know what? Many times they would tell me my pastor's name is Charles Stanley. And at first I thought, you're kidding me. I've never met Charles Stanley before. He's your pastor? And they say, yeah, he comes on every Sunday morning right there on the television set. And I think, well, okay. Now I want to be careful here, right? That's not your pastor. Has he ever visited you in the hospital? No, he never has, and he's not going to, by the way. But that's what pastors do. That's what shepherds do, is they walk through the valley of the shadow of death with you. And so the negative piece of that is that can quickly become the substitute. And Charles Stanley is really not the pastor of as many people that claim he's their pastor as he really is. Have I aided from the archived sermons of Charles Stanley? Absolutely I have. Adrian Rogers, I could tell you, I would love for Adrian Rogers to be my pastor. He's dead, but he can be preached. He can be on the screen every Sunday, but he's never going to be my pastor. This is the unique way, this is the unique thing that God has done. And he's given local churches guys like me who will be better pastors than Charles Stanley will ever be to you. Not because Charles Stanley couldn't be a good pastor, but he can't walk with you through life together. Yeah, everything else that's connected to that. In the service, together, the fellowship, the living life together, all of that. Really good.